Member has a unanimous consent request, briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that Senator Lummis' statement be included in the record.
Without objection, so ordered. Thank you. Start with Dr. Dietz and Dr. Herbert. We heard from the two of you and also from Mr. George that we need more housing supply across the board. Dr. Dietz, what are the types of housing where we see the greatest shortfall? You mentioned in your statement it's almost impossible to build affordable rental housing without a subsidy. What people are most likely to be priced out? And speak about that for a moment, if you would.
Yeah, when you talk to builders across the country and prospective home buyers, the tightest part of the housing market right now remains that small lot, entry-level construction that is appropriate for a first-time or a first-generation home buyer. So when you look at the data, more than 10 years ago, back in 2010, about 32% of new homes being built were under 2,400 square feet. That 32% share has now shrank to about 24%. So we've seen a marked decline in that entry-level construction. And then the impact, it is harder for those younger households to attain home ownership. So the result of that, of course, then is people renting longer, which is one of the reasons the rents are higher. And then we've had a near doubling of young adults who live with their parents over the last 20 years.
A doubling.
A doubling. It's gone from 1 in 10 25 to 34-year-olds to 1 in 5.
And that's over a 20-year period.
That's over a 20-year period. So these are longstanding issues.
Dr. Herbert, comment, if you would, on my question, your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I would agree with what Dr. Dietz said. I think the shortage of single family, particularly starter homes, is really important. He used the metric of 1,800 square feet. If we go down to 1,400 square feet, that was a very common home in the early 80s, and now it's low single digits. I was talking with a home builder, national home builder the other day, who specializes in this segment of the market, and they were saying there are communities that will mandate that the smallest house you can build is 1,600 square feet, so they can't even build their entry-level house in that market. So that restriction on building those starter homes is key. Dr. Dietz has also talked about the need for more townhomes and condos. That's a segment of the market that has really been missing, too, as an affordable entry point. And I would just also highlight the need for more modest-cost rental housing. What we've been building mostly over the last decade has been very large, prime location, multifamily housing downtown, which has been needed, but it's very hard to build at an affordable price point there. So it's really, we need to have lower density housing in the suburbs, but still making use of land that provides a kind of garden apartment style housing we used to build, more modest rental housing as well.
That comment you made about 1,600 and 1,400, I would, not in this hearing now, but I would like to explore that more with you, that it could answer some of these problems, I think. So pretty interesting comments. Dr. Herbert and Mr. George, you both talked about home repairs as a tool to help lower income homeowners and seniors. Talk about the benefits of home repairs, most importantly, what resources can make those repairs affordable for families with limited income. Start with you, Mr. George, then you, Dr. Dietz.
Thank you, Senator. I think home repairs are important, particularly to older population in the United States. And as you know, the population in rural America is just older than the nation as a whole, and is maybe a harbinger for things to come nationally. But oftentimes, older Americans need resources and the ability to repair their homes. And I think there are several resources that come to mind. One notably I would like to reinforce from the work that the Housing Assistance Council does is that capacity among local housing providers is extremely important. So they are oftentimes the local housing nonprofits are the connective tissue or the catalyst that help to turn these resources into affordable homes and supply those vital home repairs. So I think capacity at a local level is important. Also, I would just quickly mention USDA Section 504 Home Loan and Rehab Repair Program, which has assisted hundreds of thousands of rural homeowners across the United States and is particularly important to older homeowners. So those are a couple of quick resources.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Your comments.
Yeah, the remodeling sector is absolutely critical as part of the reinvestment strategy. As Dr. Herbert mentioned, we've got an aging housing stock. The typical home in the United States right now is about 39 years old. About 15 years ago, it was kind of in the low 30s. That's a pretty dramatic increase in the period of time. So if we're looking to improve the housing stock, improve energy efficiency, improve resiliency, making sure that remodelers have access to skilled labor is going to be key. Remodelers like to say, not only do I have to find skilled workers, but they have to work in someone's home. So finding those additional workers is important. And I think policy tools can play a role. The Section 25C and 25D energy efficiency tax credits are good tools, but making sure that people can access cash out refi mortgages to get capital, we reinvest in those homes. That's really where the low-hanging fruit is when it comes to improving our housing stock.
And Dr. Herbert, would you answer that question too? But I want to, just because time's limited, if you'd work in an answer to this question also. I've co-sponsored the Bipartisan Eviction Crisis Act with Senator Portman, my colleague who just retired from Ohio, Senator Young and Senator Bennett, offering ways to reduce the number and impact of evictions on the lives of families across the country. Matt Desmond has written about it. And so if you would also answer what lessons can we learn from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program as we continue to work to reduce evictions?
Thank you, Senator. Briefly on the remodeling question, I would echo what my colleagues have said and highlight the fact that we have an older housing stock. We also have housing that is in need of energy retrofits. And as you mentioned in your original question, an aging population that needs housing that's adapted to meet their needs with mobility and other ways to keep them safe. In terms of how, I would highlight the importance of grants, particularly for very low-income households who may not, particularly elderly households who may not have the ability to take on loans. And I would also highlight the need for technical assistance for people to be able to assess the need and help find a contractor and make sure the work is done well. In terms of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, I think it's really, the evidence is quite clear that the program was enormously helpful in keeping people, keeping renters in their homes, and at the same time also enormously helpful for landlords who were suffering from lost rental payments. More than 3 million renters have received assistance from that program. It's been remarkably well targeted. Some 2/3 of those assisted have been earned less than 30% of area median income. Another 20% earned between 30 and 50%. And what we saw during the pandemic, enormous concern that we were going to see evictions go through the roof. And what we found from the data from Eviction Lab in Princeton is that, in fact, evictions stayed very low, in part because we had a moratorium, but that emergency rental assistance was really critical in making sure that people could stay stably housed.
Thank you. Those comments are really important. Senator Scott.